After 3 weeks on a business trip, I returned home and discovered my door code had been changed. My neighbor showed me strangers touring my living room and whispered, "They're selling your house." Then my grandson called in tears. Grandpa, Dad, and Mom kicked Grandma and us out. When I confronted my son, he calmly said, "We're protecting the family." That was when I realized they were stealing everything I had built. Before we dive in, I'd like you to leave a comment. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Your answer might be exactly what someone else needs today. Just a quick note, some details have been adjusted for storytelling purposes. What matters most is the message at the heart of it all. The passcode I'd used for 6 years no longer opened my front door. I stood on my own porch in Cedar Park, Texas, Friday evening light, fading, and punched in the 6 digits again. The electronic lock blinked red. Nothing. My name is Lester Caldwell. I'm 68 years old, and I spent 40 years supervising construction crews across Central Texas, building the bones of subdivisions that now house thousands of families. I know how things work. Doors open when you use the right code. I tried a third time slower. 1, 4, 7, 2, 9, 3. The lock stayed red. The Houston job had finished 2 days early. 3 weeks of foundation work sleeping in a motel that smelled like industrial cleaner. I'd called Nora Wednesday to say I'd be home Friday instead of Sunday, but she didn't answer. I figured she was busy with the grandkids. I didn't think much of it. Now I stood here with cement dust still on my work pants and cold dread working through my chest. I looked up at the security camera under the eaves. Green light blinking steadily. The system worked fine. The door wasn't broken, only the code was wrong. I set down my duffel and tried Nora's birthday digits. Red light. I pulled out my phone, dialed her cell, straight to voicemail. I tried the landline. 5 rings, then the answering machine. The October air smelled like cut grass and someone's backyard grill. Normal Friday evening in a neighborhood I'd watched grow from raw land. But standing here locked out of my own house, everything felt fundamentally wrong. 30 years of construction taught me to check the foundation first. But what do you check when your own front door locks you out? I walked around the side boots, crunching gravel. The backyard gate gave me the same red light. I peered through the kitchen window. Everything looked normal. Coffee maker on the counter, dish towel on the oven handle, ceramic fruit bowl centered on the table. But no lights, no movement, no Nora. "Mr. Caldwell." I turned. My neighbor Vera Sutton stood near the fence separating our yards, one hand on the weathered wood. 72 years old, retired postal worker who'd lived on our street for 20 years. She had the careful expression of someone who knows bad news and doesn't want to deliver it. "My Vera," I walked toward her. "You seen Nora today?" She hesitated. "Mr. Caldwell, I thought you already knew. When did a man's own house become enemy territory? Your wife and the kids." Her voice dropped. "They left yesterday, just before noon. Nora had 2 suitcases. Finn was carrying his backpack and Ivy had that pink bear." My chest tightened. "Left where?" I don't know." I called out to her. She looked like she'd lost her soul, Mr. Caldwell. She said she couldn't talk. She just kept walking. Finn and Ivy. My grandchildren, 12 and 8 years old, living with us the past 6 months, while their parents, my son Everett and his wife Sienna, sorted out financial trouble they wouldn't explain. "Did you see Everett?" I asked. "Or Sienna?" Vera looked away. "Not yesterday, but—" She pulled her phone from her cardigan. "Mr. Caldwell, there's something you should see." She walked closer, held out the phone. The screen showed a photograph taken through a window, her kitchen window, the angle looking into my living room. 2 people stood in my house. A man in business casual holding a clipboard. A woman in a blazer gesturing toward the fireplace. I took this 3 days ago, Vera said quietly. Tuesday afternoon. The man was wearing a badge. I zoomed in. She swiped to another photo, cropped and enlarged. The badge was visible. Professional headshot name I couldn't read, but the logo underneath was clear. Webb Realty Group, Cedar Park. I had built homes for 30 years. I knew what it felt like when a foundation cracked. This was that feeling, only the crack was opening under my feet. A realtor's, I said. Why, I thought maybe you'd decided to sell, Vera said. But then when Nora left looking like that and now you can't get in, I stared at the photo. The badge. The professional blazer. The clipboard in my living room in the house I'd lived in for 18 years. The house I'd renovated myself. Did Nora say anything else? She said she was sorry. Vera's voice cracked. She said, "Tell Ray I'm so sorry." That's all. Ray. The nickname only Nora used from 40 years ago when we were young and building our life from nothing. I handed back her phone. "Thank you for telling me. Mr. Caldwell, do you want me to call someone, the police?" "No, not yet." I picked up my duffel, pulled out my phone, scrolled to a number I'd programmed 2 years ago and never used. Finn's emergency cell. The private line I'd set up precisely for situations like this, the one only he and I knew about. The call connected. 1 ring, 2. Vera watched me worry, creasing her face. 3 rings, 4. Then a young voice shaking, "Grandpa, Finn." Relief flooded through me. "Where are you?" "The Sunrise Motel. On Highway 183. Grandma said we had to leave. She said we couldn't stay at the house anymore. She's been crying all night and won't tell me why." I looked at my front door, the red light on the keypad, the security camera blinking green, the photograph on Vera's phone burning in my mind, strangers in business clothes, standing in my living room with clipboards and professional smiles. My house wasn't just locked, it was being sold. 20 seconds after Finn hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time a text. No greeting, no explanation, just an address and a room number. Comfort Inn, Highway 183, room 114. I called Nora's cell again. Still voicemail. I tried Everett. The automated voice said his phone was switched off. I climbed into my truck, cement dust still on my hands, and drove. Highway 183 cut through Cedar Park like a scar. Friday evening traffic crawled past strip malls and chain restaurants glowing in the October dusk. I'd driven this route 1,000 times, coming home from job sites, bringing Nora groceries, picking up the grandkids from school. Now every mile felt like driving toward the edge of something I didn't understand yet. The Comfort Inn sat behind a Denny's 2 stories of beige siding and exterior walkways. I parked under a flickering light and took the stairs to the 2nd floor. Room 114 was at the end of the corridor. I knocked. Footsteps inside, quick and light. The door opened, a cracked security chain still on. Finn looked out at me. My 12-year-old grandson, dark hair falling over his forehead, holding himself like a sentry. When he saw it was me, relief flooded his face. He closed the door to unhook the chain, then opened it wide. "Grandpa." I stepped inside. The room smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and cheap soap. 1 queen bed, 1 armchair, a television mounted to the wall. 7-year-old Ivy Sienna's daughter from a previous marriage who had no biological tie to me but called me Grandpa anyway, slept curled in the armchair, clutching a small teddy bear. Her face still showed tear tracks, and my wife Nora sat on the edge of the bed, her 66 years showing in the exhaustion around her eyes, still holding herself with the quiet dignity of a retired teacher who refused to break. Finn stood beside her, holding her hand with the fierce protectiveness of a child who'd been forced to become the man of the house overnight. Nora looked at me, didn't cry, didn't run to me, just said, "You're home early." Not a question, a statement. "Where's Everett?" I asked. "Why didn't you call me?" I couldn't. Her voice was steady. Sienna took my phone 2 days ago. Said I kept losing it, that it was safer if she held on to it for me. I closed the door behind me, set my duffel down. Nora, what the hell is happening? Finn looked up at his grandmother, then at me. Dad said you weren't coming back, Grandpa. He said permanently, that the house was too much for Grandma to manage alone. But that's a lie. I know. Finn's jaw tightened. That's why I kept the emergency phone you gave me. Dad doesn't know I still have it. Nora touched Finn's shoulder. Go sit with your sister, sweetheart. Let me talk to Grandpa. Finn hesitated, then moved to the armchair, settling on the floor beside Ivy. He kept one hand on her arm, protective even in sleep. Nora stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. Don't blame Everett just yet. There's something much worse than you think. I saw a realtor inside our house, Nora, 3 days ago. Vera showed me a photo. She turned and I saw something flicker across her face. Not surprise. Recognition. It started 3 months ago, she said. Small things. Sienna started pointing out little things I supposedly forgot. Said I left the stove on. Said I misplaced her keys. Said I mixed up Ivy's doctor appointment and brought her on the wrong day. My hands curled into fists. You didn't do any of that. Tina, I know, but she documented everything. Took photos of the stove. Made me sign a little notebook acknowledging my mistakes. Said it was to help me keep track. Ivy stirred in the armchair. Finn murmured something soft, and she settled back down. Nora's voice dropped. Then a consultant came to the house. Said he was from Elder Care Services, needed to do a routine home safety evaluation. I didn't think anything of it. He walked through every room, took notes, asked me questions about my daily routine. 2 weeks later, paperwork arrived about roof repairs we apparently needed immediately. I didn't remember requesting an estimate, but Sienna said I'd called them myself and forgotten. No, she was building a case, I said. The words tasted like ash. Making you look incompetent. Ivy woke then, her small face turning toward me. She looked at me with hollow eyes. Grandpa, Daddy said you were never coming back. 30 years of construction couldn't prepare me for that sentence. I crossed the room, knelt beside the armchair. I'm here now, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. She reached out, wrapped her arms around my neck, and buried her face in my shoulder. I held her while she cried, feeling Finn's hand find my arm. After the grandchildren finally fell asleep again, Nora and I stepped outside. The motel walkway was lit by harsh fluorescence. We sat in 2 plastic chairs someone had left near the ice machine. I'd grabbed 2 coffees from the vending machine downstairs. They tasted like burnt water. It was 9:30. The highway hummed in the distance. Last night. Nora said, Sienna put 2 suitcases outside our bedroom door. She knocked, waited for me to open it, then said, staying here any longer only makes things harder for our family, Mom. You understand, don't you? She said if I resisted, if I made a scene, she'd call her contact at Child Protective Services. Said Ivy would go to foster care before she'd let me put the child at risk. I set down my coffee. My hand was shaking. Ivy has nothing to do with this. I know, but Sienna knew exactly what threat would work. Nora's voice was steady, clinical, the way an engineer reads a damage report when the building is still standing, but the foundation has already cracked. So I took the suitcases. I held Finn's and Ivy's hands, and I walked out. Where's your phone, your documents? Sienna kept everything. My phone, my wallet, my identification. She said she'd send them later once I was settled somewhere. I stared at her. You left with nothing. Nora reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out a small silver key. I took my sewing box, she said quietly. Before Sienna could stop me, I left it in a locker at the Greyhound station, locker number 47. I looked at the key in her palm. What's in the box? Everything we'll need. She closed my hand around the key. I knew something was wrong, Ray. I didn't know what. But I knew Sienna was building towards something, so I started keeping records. 42 years of marriage taught me Nora never kept anything without a good reason. Saturday morning, I woke in the motel armchair, where I dozed after Nora went to bed. The key to locker 47 was still in my pocket. I walked downstairs to the front desk and paid cash for 3 more nights, keeping my family somewhere safe while I figured out what we were dealing with. Then I sat in my truck in the parking lot and dialed my son for the 8th time. This time Everett answered, "Tschikstidand." His voice came through smooth and casual, almost cheerful. My son Everett, 40 years old, IT project manager, who could make lies sound like carefully reasoned logic. "You're back. Why didn't you let us know? Not are you okay? Not where have you been? Not I've been worried. Where are you?" I looked at my phone screen. The number showing wasn't his usual cell. It was unfamiliar local area code, but not one I recognized. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Today." A pause. Long enough that I heard background noise, voices, movement, the distant sound of a door closing. "Sure, Dad," he said finally. "This afternoon, then. There's a coffee shop on—" "I know where," I interrupted. 2 o'clock. Perfect. Looking forward to catching up." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone. Looking forward to catching up. Like we were old colleagues who'd lost touch, not father and son, not family, living under the same roof until 5 days ago. 30 years supervising construction sites taught me one thing: when someone asks, "Where are you?" before asking, "Are you okay?" It isn't a question of concern. It's a question of tracking. I started the truck and drove back to Cedar Park. The house looked exactly the same from the street. Red brick, white trim, the oak tree in front yard I'd planted when Everett was 7. The driveway I'd poured myself in 1997. The porch where I'd stood yesterday, trying my passcode 4 times, while the lock blinked red. I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked 3 houses down, engine running, and just watched. No cars in the driveway, no movement behind the windows. The security camera under the eaves blinked its steady green. A tap on my passenger window made me turn. Vera Sutton stood there, cardigan pulled tight against the October morning chill. I rolled down the window. "Mr. Caldwell." She glanced toward my house, then back at me. "I need to tell you something else. About what I saw. Get in." She walked around, climbed into the passenger seat. Her hands twisted together in her lap. "Mionser. The past 3 weeks, there have been people coming and going from your house. Not every day, but often enough, I noticed." "What kind of people?" "They weren't contractors, Mr. Caldwell. They were dressed like office people. Business casual, taking notes on clipboards. They'd go inside, stay 20 or 30 minutes, then leave." I kept my eyes on the house. "How many?" "Different ones each time. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3. One afternoon, 2 of them had cameras, professional ones, not phones. They were photographing every room. I could see them through your living room window." My jaw tightened. "When was that?" "Tuesday, the same day I took the photo I showed you. The same day, realtors were inside my house with their badges and clipboards and professional cameras, documenting my property like it already belonged to someone else. Did you ever see Everett during these visits?" Vera hesitated. "Once. Last Monday. A woman came mid-30s carrying a leather portfolio. Everett opened the door for her, walked her through the house, stood in the driveway talking for maybe 10 minutes after. She took photos of the exterior. Vera's testimony was building material, not decorative structural. Every detail was a beam I could use. "On Thursday," I said quietly. "When Nora left." "Tell me exactly what you saw." Vera's hands stilled. She looked at me and I saw something like pain cross her face. I was making lunch. I saw movement through your front window and looked out. Your wife was standing on the porch with 2 suitcases. Finn was beside her with his backpack, and Ivy was holding that pink bear. Nora looked. She trailed off, like she'd lost her soul. I said, remembering what she'd told me yesterday. You said that already. Yes, but Mr. Caldwell, your son, was there too. I turned to look at her. Everett stood in the doorway. Vera said, her voice dropping. Your wife picked up both suitcases. She took Ivy's hand. Finn walked beside them carrying his own bag. And your son stood at that door for 5 full minutes, watching her walk down the street. He didn't help her with the suitcases. No. He didn't try to stop her. No. He didn't say anything. Not that I could hear. He just stood there, watching, making sure she actually left. I looked back at the house. The red brick I'd chosen, the white trim I'd painted 3 times over the years, the door I'd replaced after a storm in 2012, the home I'd built with my own hands where I'd raised my son, where I'd imagined growing old with Nora, where my grandchildren had learned to walk and read and laugh, and my son had stood in that doorway watching his mother walk away carrying suitcases holding his daughter's hand, and done nothing. There's something else, Vera said quietly. That same afternoon, maybe an hour after your wife left, a car pulled up. Black sedan. A woman got out, same one from Monday with the portfolio. She went inside, stayed maybe 15 minutes. When she came out, she was on her phone smiling. I closed my eyes. Felt the key to locker 47 pressing against my thigh through my pocket. Felt 42 years of marriage and 40 years of fatherhood pressing against my chest. Thank you, Vera, I said, for telling me. She touched my arm. What are you going to do? I looked at the house I'd built, the door where my son had stood, watching his mother leave with 2 children and 2 suitcases, and understood Everett wasn't a victim of this conspiracy. He was an architect of it. I'm going to have coffee with my son, I said, and listen to him lie to my face. At 2 o'clock, Saturday afternoon, my son sat across from me in the coffee shop, dressed like he'd just come from a business meeting, and smiled like nothing was wrong. Dad. Everett stood, offered his hand. Good to see you. How was Houston? I sat down. Finished early, so I gathered. He sipped his coffee. I tried calling Friday night. Your phone went straight to voicemail. Battery died. He nodded, sympathetic. Well, you're here now. I watched the way he held his cup, the way he met my eyes without flinching. Where's your mother? Something flickered across his face. Fast. That's what I wanted to talk about, Dad. Mom was becoming difficult to work with, showing some worrying behavior. What kind of behavior? Forgetting things, losing track of time. A doctor made some recommendations about her living situation. Which doctor? Not Dr. Kowalski, from the elder care clinic on Ranch Road. He did a home assessment a few weeks ago. I filed that away. And the passcode, for safety, Dad. There have been break-ins around here lately. I upgraded the system, changed all the codes. I was going to text you the new one, but you came home before I had a chance. Every answer sounded rehearsed, pre-packaged, delivered with IT manager smoothness. And Sienna, she's been helping, taking care of things while you were away. You know how demanding her real estate work is, but she made time. There it was, real estate work. I leaned back. Speaking of work, which company called me about that Houston job? I should thank them for the referral. Everett's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth, just for half a second. Then he set it down, smiled. Didn't you apply for it yourself, Dad? Maybe. I apply to a lot of projects, just trying to remember which one this was. Well, it was good work, right? 3 weeks of steady pay? He changed the subject after that. Talked about neighborhood news, Finn's school weather predictions. I let him talk. I watched. I listened. The column that looks straightest on the blueprint is usually the one that's been reinforced beforehand. And my son's answers were too straight, too smooth. We left at 3:15. He walked me to my truck, gave me another firm handshake, promised to send the new passcode soon. I drove back to the motel. By 7 o'clock Saturday evening, I sat in my truck with the backup family phone Nora had mentioned. I unlocked it, scrolled through apps, found one I didn't recognize, Family Locator. The interface showed a map with 5 colored dots. I tapped Location History. A timeline appeared. My entire 3-week Houston trip mapped minute by minute. The Marriott where I'd stayed, the construction site. Every move tracked. I scrolled to Friday, October 20th, 5:12 p.m., Cedar Park, Texas. My location reappearing on the map. 5:30 p.m., front porch, Caldwell residence. 18 minutes. From the moment I crossed into Cedar Park to the moment I tried my passcode and got the red light. They knew I was coming. They knew exactly when. They were watching. I closed the app and sat in the darkening parking lot, feeling cold clarity settle in. Not anger yet, just understanding. The foundation was never solid to begin with. Sunday morning, I knocked on room 114 at 10 o'clock. Nora opened the door, looking slightly better. Finn sat on the bed reading, and Ivy, 7 years old with no blood tie to me but who called me Grandpa, ran straight into my arms. Grandpa, she hugged my waist. I knelt down. Hey, sweetheart. She glanced at Nora, then Finn, then whispered, I have something. She pulled me to the corner, reached into her backpack, pulled out an old phone with a cracked screen in a green case. What's this? Daddy's old phone, she whispered. He kept it in the kitchen drawer. I heard him tell Mommy you were never coming back. I got scared, so I took this. I thought you might need it. I looked at her small face, her serious eyes, looked over at Finn, watching from the bed with a blank expression, saying nothing. The child with no blood tie to me was the first to hand me a weapon. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into. It's who fights beside you. Thank you, Ivy. This was very brave. I took the phone to my truck, plugged it into my charger. Battery showed 12%. I turned it on, no passcode required. Opened the apps. Found voice memos. One file, named with 3 question marks. Duration 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Recorded 3 weeks ago at 11:43 p.m. I plugged in earphones, hit play. Static first. Rustling. Then a voice I recognized, Sienna. She needs to be done before he gets back. The signature is on the contract, now all that's left is the transfer. If you don't, more rustling, a door closing. Then clearer. Your mother isn't the problem. The problem is the fund. If you don't handle the fund by... Static. Silence. I listened 3 times. 47 seconds of clear speech. The rest background noise. Not enough to arrest anyone, but enough to know what to look for. I sat there with the old phone in my hand, Ivy's gift, and began drawing a structural blueprint in my head, the kind I used on job sites when analyzing load-bearing points. Which column, which beam, where the weight really rested. The signature, the contract, the fund. They'd built something while I was in Houston. Now I just needed to find the blueprints. I needed to find the blueprints. So I went back to the beginning. Sunday morning, 10:30, I sat alone in my truck in the motel parking lot and listened to the recording 3 more times, volume turned high enough to catch every breath, every shuffle of paper. 4 minutes and 17 seconds total. Most of it was static, rustling background noise, but buried in there 47 seconds of clear audio. I isolated the parts I could understand. First, Sienna's voice, slightly distant, like she was standing across a room from the phone. Needs to be done before he gets back. The signature is on the contract now, all that's left is the transfer. If you don't, rustling sounds. Something heavy being set down. A door closing. Then a voice I recognized, muffled but distinct. My son Everett saying something I couldn't make out. The tone was calm, not confused, not manipulated. calculating. Then Sienna again, clearer this time. Your mother isn't the problem. The problem is the fund. If you don't handle the fund by static, nothing else. I sat there with my earphones in, staring at the dashboard. 47 seconds wasn't enough to arrest anyone, but it was enough to know what to search for. A contract with my signature, a fund. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove to the public library 3 blocks from the motel. Small building, quiet on a Sunday afternoon, 2 rows of public computers along the back wall. I took a seat at the furthest one, pulled up Google and typed in my home address. First result, Zillow. I clicked it. My house filled the screen. Professional photographs, the kind realtors use for high-end listings. The living room I'd built in 1997. The kitchen I'd renovated in 2012. The master bedroom with the bay window Nora had wanted for 20 years. Listed price $389,000. I stared at that number. Cedar Park median home value was $550,000. I knew because I'd looked it up 6 months ago when Nora and I discussed refinancing. Someone had listed my house for $161,000 below market value. I scrolled down. Interior photos dated October 8, 2023, 12 days ago. While I was in Houston, every room photographed. Professional lighting. Staged to look empty, unoccupied, ready for new owners. At the bottom, listing agent, Rowan Finch Web Realty Group. Contact information. Phone number, email address. I opened a new tab, pulled up my personal email, and screenshotted every screenshots to myself. Saved them to the cloud. Then I pulled out the USB drive I kept on my keychain construction habit, always have 3 backups, and copied everything to that too. 40 years supervising construction taught me you don't start demolition until you map every utility line underground. I was mapping utilities. I went back to Google and typed Rowan Finch, Cedar Park, Texas. First 3 results were professional listings. Web Realty Group bio. LinkedIn profile showing 10 years in real estate. Chamber of Commerce member since 2018. Fourth result, Facebook. I clicked it. The photo was from 2019. Someone's birthday party, backyard setting, string lights overhead, people holding drinks and laughing. In the center, a man in his late 30s with sandy hair and a casual smile. Rowan Finch, according to the tag. And beside him, arms slung over his shoulder, leaning in close like they were old friends, Sienna. Both of them laughing, relaxed, comfortable. The caption written by whoever hosted the party, "Happy birthday to my ride or die." Sienna Voss tagged. I stared at that photo. 5 years old. Casual. Meaningless to anyone scrolling past. But to me it meant everything. Why would someone list a $550,000 house for $389,000 unless they needed it sold fast or needed someone specific to buy it? I saved the Facebook photo, screenshotted it twice, sent it to my email, copied it to the USB drive. Then I sat back in the hard library chair and looked at the screen. Rowan Finch wasn't just the listing agent assigned by chance. He was Sienna's friend. Maybe more than friend. The kind of person you call ride or die. The kind of person who might help you sell a house that doesn't belong to you. I closed the browser, cleared the history out of habit, and walked out of the library. Back in my truck, I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Started writing down everything I knew. 1. My house was listed for sale without my knowledge or consent. 2. The listing agent had a prior personal relationship with Sienna. 3. Interior photos were taken while I was in Houston, tracked via location app on family phone. 4. Incomplete audio recording referenced a contract with my signature and something called the fund. 5. Everett changed my passcode 18 minutes after I arrived back in Cedar Park, meaning someone was watching my location in real time. 6. Everett stood in the doorway, watching Nora leave with the children, and did nothing to stop her. I looked at the list. 6 pieces of evidence. None of them individually enough to prove conspiracy. But together they formed a pattern, a blueprint. I just needed to know who the buyer was supposed to be, who was waiting to purchase my house for $161,000 under market value while I was conveniently 300 miles away in Houston. I started the truck and sat there with the engine idling, thinking about structure, about load-bearing walls, about how buildings collapse when you remove the wrong support beam. This conspiracy had a support beam somewhere, a weak point, a place where the whole thing would fall apart if I applied the right pressure. I just had to find it. And I was starting to think the weak point wasn't Everett or Sienna. It was Rowan Finch, the realtor, who thought he was helping an old friend and didn't realize he'd left a 5-year-old Facebook photo online showing exactly how close they were. By Monday morning, I knew who the conspirators were. Now I needed to know how to prove it. I sat across from attorney Colette Mercer in her Austin office, 4th floor, overlooking Congress Avenue bookshelves, lined with law volumes and case files, no decorative nonsense. A 50-year-old elder law specialist, whose no-nonsense demeanor told me she'd seen every fraud scheme imaginable and beaten most of them. I laid 20 years of carefully filed documents on her desk and said, "My son is trying to steal my house." She looked at me then at the documents. "Tell me everything." I gave her the 20-minute version. Changed passcode. Family forced out with 2 suitcases. Incomplete audio recording. House listed $160,000 below market value. Realtor's personal connection to Sienna documented in social media. Location tracking app showing they watched my movements in real time. I laid out the Zillow screenshots, the Facebook photo, the phone with the recording. Colette listened without interrupting, taking notes in what looked like shorthand. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to be clear about something. You don't have enough to arrest anyone today, but you have enough to start asking the right questions." "What questions?" "First, was there a sale contract? Because if your house is listed, someone had to sign paperwork authorizing that listing. Either your signature was forged, or it was obtained under false pretenses, or," she paused, "or it was stolen digitally." I leaned forward. "Stolen how?" "DocuSign, electronic signature platform. Most real estate transactions use it now. If there's a sale contract with your name on it, it was signed digitally. Those leave audit trails, device fingerprints, IP addresses, exact timestamps. Digital signatures don't lie, Mr. Caldwell. But they can be stolen." She pulled a legal pad toward her, started writing. "I'm going to file a discovery request today. 24-hour turnaround. If there's a contract, I'll have the audit trail by tomorrow afternoon. And then we know if this is fraud or just family manipulation. One is a crime, the other is harder to prosecute." She made 2 more notes, then looked up at me. "I'm also scheduling a forensic accountant. You mentioned something called the fund in that recording. We need to trace where money was supposed to go. Colette didn't promise miracles. That was all I needed, someone who understood that justice is built the same way as houses, one verified measurement at a time." I left her office at 10:30 with a retainer agreement signed and a timeline 48 hours to gather enough evidence to decide between civil suit and criminal charges. Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed with an email from Colette Mercer. Subject: DocuSign audit trail urgent. I was sitting in the motel room, laptop open on the bed. Nora was downstairs with the grandchildren getting lunch from the vending machines. I opened the email. Attached PDF document, 14 pages. I clicked it. The first page was a cover letter from DocuSign Legal Response Team. 24-hour discovery turnaround, as Colette promised. The second page was the audit trail. Document sale contract. Caldwell Residential Property. 2847 Oakmont Drive, Cedar Park, Texas. Signed by Lester Caldwell. Date October 14, 2023. Time 10:47 p.m. IP address 192.168.1.4. Location Cedar Park, Texas. Device fingerprint Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 Android 12. I stared at that screen. October 14th. I pulled out my phone, scrolled back through my location history from the family tracking app. October 14th, 10:47 p.m. Houston Marriott Galleria, room 414. I'd been in Houston, 300 miles away. I pulled out the folder Colette had given me, found the hotel receipt I'd saved. Credit card charge for the room dated October 14th. Keycard access log showing I entered my room at 10:15 p.m. that night. While I was walking into a Houston hotel room, someone in Cedar Park was signing my name to a sale contract. IP address 192.168.1.4. I recognized that. My home network. The Wi-Fi router I'd installed myself in 2018. Device Samsung Galaxy Tab S7. I stared at the device fingerprint Samsung Galaxy Tab S7. The tablet I'd bought to modernize my work, to keep up with younger site managers who used digital everything. The tool I'd trusted my son to help me set up, to show me how to sign delivery receipts and review blueprints. The tablet I'd left on the kitchen counter when I drove to Houston 3 weeks ago. I scrolled down through the audit trail, found the account login history. DocuSign account lester.caldwell.construction@gmail.com. Logged in October 14th, 10:42 p.m. Device Samsung Galaxy Tab S7, IP 192.168.1.4. Document opened October 14th, 10:45 p.m. Signature applied October 14th, 10:47 p.m. Session ended October 14th, 10:48 p.m. 6 minutes. That's all it took. Everett didn't forge my signature. He didn't create a deep fake or practice my handwriting. He didn't need to. He simply picked up my tablet, logged into my DocuSign account credentials, saved password auto-filled, because I'd asked him to help me set it up that way, so I wouldn't forget, pulled up the contract, and clicked the button. Perfect digital signature. Legally binding. Indistinguishable from one I would have signed myself, except I was 300 miles away when it happened. I read the audit trail 3 times, checking every detail against my records. Cross-referenced the timestamp with my hotel keycard log. Verified the IP address against my home network settings. The signature was perfect, because it wasn't forged. It was real. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Federal crime. Unauthorized access to a protected computer system. 5 years minimum. My son hadn't just betrayed me. He'd left a digital fingerprint at the scene of the crime. I opened a reply to Colette's email and typed one line. This is enough to file charges, but I need to know what else he signed. Sent. Then I sat there on the motel bed, looking at the audit trail on my screen, and thought about the tablet sitting on my kitchen counter 3 weeks ago. The tool I'd bought to make my work easier. The device my son had helped me learn to use. Trust, I realized, wasn't just an emotion. It was a vulnerability. A door left unlocked. A password saved for convenience. And Everett had walked through that door while I slept in a Houston hotel room, signed away my house in 6 minutes, and walked back out. I closed the laptop and looked at the ceiling. Now I just needed to know what else he'd signed while he had access. By Tuesday afternoon, I knew what Everett had signed. Now I needed to know what Nora had signed. Colette placed a single sheet of paper on the desk, and my wife's face went pale. We sat in Colette's office, Nora beside me, for the first time since this started. Her hands folded in her lap, shoulders straight, despite the exhaustion showing in her eyes. Colette tapped the document. Limited power of attorney for property management. Your signature is at the bottom, Mrs. Caldwell. I need you to tell me, do you remember signing this? Nora leaned forward, staring at the paper. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. They told me this was to replace the roof. Just authorization to hire contractors while he was away. Who told you that? Sienna. She said the roof inspector found damage, that it needed urgent repairs before winter, and with my husband in Houston for 3 weeks, they needed someone who could sign contracts with roofers. Colette pulled the document closer to Nora. This is a 90-day power of attorney giving your son and daughter-in-law full property management authority, enough to execute a home sale if they had your husband's signature. I watched Nora process that, watched the color drain from her face completely. Which they got, I said quietly, through my DocuSign account. Colette nodded. This document plus the fraudulent digital signature equals full legal authority to sell the house. That was the plan. Nora's hands trembled. I didn't know. I thought I was helping. The roof. There was no roof damage, Colette said gently. We checked with Cedar Park building permits. No inspection, no permit application, nothing. Mrs. Caldwell, you signed this under undue influence without independent legal counsel. Under Texas law, that's voidable. But I need you to understand something important. She waited until Nora looked up. This is not your fault. You were the victim of a systematic manipulation campaign designed to make you doubt your own judgment. Nora looked down at her hands. The hands that had signed that paper, believing she was helping, not surrendering. I'm sorry, she whispered. I took those hands in mine. You have nothing to be sorry for. Colette made a note on her legal pad. Mrs. Caldwell, that leads us to the next part. The medical records they fabricated to make you look incompetent. Nora's head snapped up. What medical records? That's what I'm about to show you. Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, I sat in the motel room with my laptop open, let aloud to Nora. Subject forensic medical expert report, Nora Caldwell. I scrolled down to the findings. Dr. Raymond Kowalski's credentials were used to file the assessment. Records confirm Dr. Kowalski retired in 2021 and his medical license expired 2 years ago. No patient named Nora Caldwell ever visited any practice under his credentials. The file numbers were obtained through insurance fraud appointments, booked using Mrs. Caldwell's insurance information, then canceled before visit dates, retaining reference numbers for fabrication of records. Nora sat beside me on the bed, very still. I kept reading. 3 video recordings submitted as evidence of cognitive decline show one Mrs. Caldwell searching for car keys in kitchen. Analysis shows keys were placed in unusual location inconsistent with witness testimony about Mrs. Caldwell's habits. 2 Mrs. Caldwell expressing confusion about a doctor's appointment. Phone records show calendar entry was modified remotely via family sharing account 3 hours before appointment time. 3 Mrs. Caldwell appearing disoriented in conversation. Audio analysis reveals questions were edited to remove context, creating false impression of confusion. I stopped reading. Looked at Nora. She stared at the screen. The keys. I looked for those keys for 20 minutes. I kept thinking I always put them on the hook by the door. Always. And they weren't there. She hid them, I said. And the appointment. Dr. Harrison's office. I showed up on Tuesday and they said my appointment was Monday. I was so confused. I checked my phone calendar 3 times that morning. She changed it, remotely, through the family calendar sharing. 40 years of construction sites taught me about structural damage. You can see cracked foundations, sagging beams, walls that bow under bad loads. Sienna had inflicted the kind, you couldn't see the kind, that makes a person question whether their own foundation is still solid. Nora's voice was very quiet. I kept checking myself, wondering if I was losing my mind. Every morning I'd wake up and test my memory. What day is it? What did I eat yesterday? Where did I put my coffee cup? Little things, just to make sure I was still me. I closed the laptop. She spent 3 months gaslighting you, Krunt, I said. Texas Penal Code Section 32.55, Elder Financial Abuse. For assets over $200,000, it's a first-degree felony. Maximum 99 years. Nora sat in silence for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. "I want her in prison," she said. Her voice was steady, clear. "Not for the money, for this." She turned to look at me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in weeks. Not fear, not exhaustion, clarity. And she made me doubt my own mind, Lester. Every morning I woke up wondering if today was the day I'd forget who I was, wondering if the kids were safe with me, wondering if I was becoming a burden to you. She walked back to where I sat, placed her hand on my shoulder. That's the crime I can't forgive. Not the house, not the money, the fact that she made me afraid of myself. I stood, took her hands again. "Then we'll make sure she answers for it." Nora nodded. "What's next?" "The sewing box," I said. "Whatever you hid in locker 47 at the bus station, whatever evidence you secured before they forced you out. I need to tell you what's in there," Nora said. "Because it's not what you think." She sat back down on the bed, and for the first time since this started, she looked like the woman I'd married 42 years ago. Strong, clear-eyed, ready to fight. "I didn't just hide evidence, Lester. I hid the one thing Sienna didn't know I had. The one thing that proves this whole scheme was planned from the beginning." Wednesday evening, we went back to see the grandchildren. Ivy ran to me the moment I opened the motel room door, but Finn didn't even look up from his phone. 7-year-old Ivy wrapped her arms around my waist. "Grandpa, where were you all day?" "Talking to lawyers, making sure you and Finn are safe." Finn sat on the bed, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on his screen. 12 years old, and already learning how to build walls. I sat beside him. Didn't reach for him, didn't try to take the phone. Just sat there. "Finn," I said quietly. "I know your dad told you something about me. I'm not asking who you believe. I just want you to know I'm still here." He looked up, just for a second. His eyes were red like he'd been crying recently. Then he looked back down without speaking. But he didn't leave the room. I stood to go. Ivy pulled my hand, whispered, "Grandpa, Finn was crying last night. He told me I wasn't allowed to tell you." I looked at the boy, pretending to be absorbed in his screen. 12 years old. Forced to choose between his father and grandfather without enough information. Crying alone because both options felt like betrayal. Sometimes you have to learn from children, Ivy, who trusts without evidence, and Finn, who cries when he thinks no one is listening. Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, we drove to the Cedar Park Greyhound station. Plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, overhead announcements about departures to San Antonio. The lockers were along the back wall. Nora walked to number 47, unlocked it with the silver key. Inside, a green plastic sewing box with an embroidery pattern on the lid. She set it on the bench, opened it. No thread, no needles, just documents. Certified copy of a house deed folded once. Original mortgage agreement. A sealed envelope with my name written in Nora's handwriting, read when needed. And a small black micro SD card in a plastic case. Nora picked up the card. I photographed every document Sienna had me sign over 3 months. Every time she put something in front of me, I took a photo first. I didn't know why. I just didn't feel right about it. I pocketed the card, then picked up the certified deed, unfolded it. Travis County, Texas. Certificate of title. Property address 2847 Oakmont Drive, Cedar Park. Dated March 12, 2009. Property owner Nora Ann Caldwell. My name wasn't on it. "Nora, when did we?" "You transferred it to me in 2009. March. You just started that high-rise project downtown. 20 stories. You came home one night and said if you ever fell off a scaffold, the house had to be in my name so inheritance wouldn't get tied up in probate." I stared at the paper. We went to the county clerk together, signed the transfer, filed it. You kept a copy in your desk for a few months. And then I forgot. She nodded. I thought I was investigating which support beam was compromised. I didn't realize the entire building had been standing on a different foundation all along. Does Everett know about this? I don't think so. He was living in Dallas then. We never showed him the actual deed transfer. Everett had spent a year planning to steal a house that legally wasn't mine to sign away. He'd forged my signature, manipulated Nora, fabricated medical records, tracked my location, forced his family out. All to sell a house that belonged to Nora, not me. The sale contract was void. The listing was void. The power of attorney was void, because I didn't own the house. Does Colette know about this? Nora shook her head. I pulled out my phone, typed an email. From Lester Caldwell to Colette Mercer. Subject: case-changing evidence. Attached photo of the deed. Message: the house is in my wife's name. Has been since 2009. I forgot. Everett didn't know. Every document he signed legally void. Call me. Sent. I sat there holding the deed, Nora beside me, her sewing box open between us. This changes everything, I said. Nora looked at me. Does it change what they did? No. Does it change what they intended? No. Then it doesn't change what happens next. They still committed fraud. They still manipulated me, tracked you, forced us out. The house being in my name doesn't erase those crimes. It just means they're stupider than we thought. My phone rang. Colette. Mr. Caldwell, I just saw your email. Are you certain about this deed? I'm holding the certified copy, dated 2009, Nora's name only. Terms. Then your son committed federal computer fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, all in pursuit of property he had no legal claim to. This doesn't just void the sale. This makes their intent crystal clear. Deliberate theft. What's next? We figure out what they were really after. If the house wasn't the target, or if they thought it was, but there's something bigger, we need to know what else they were hunting. I thought about Sienna's voice on the recording. The problem is the fund. The fund, I said. I'll start digging. Retirement accounts, life insurance, investment funds, anything with your name that could be transferred or liquidated. I'll call you back in 2 hours. She hung up. I looked at Nora, at the sewing box, at the deed that changed everything and nothing. Let's go back to the motel, I said. We need to see what's on that micro SD card. The micro SD card would have to wait. Friday morning, Colette called. Her voice was tight, controlled the voice of a lawyer who just found the smoking gun. Mr. Caldwell, I need you to come to my office. Now. I found something in your financial records. I drove to Austin alone. Nora stayed with the grandchildren. Colette met me at her door, didn't waste time with pleasantries. She had documents spread across her desk, printouts, highlighted sections, sticky notes marking key passages. Sit down, she said. I sat. She placed 2 documents in front of me. Life insurance policy. Guardian Life. Death benefit $650,000. And your IRA retirement account through Fidelity. Current balance $420,000. Total $1.07 million. I nodded. I know. I've had that insurance for 30 years. The IRA since I was 2 weeks before you returned from Houston. She interrupted. Beneficiary change requests were submitted via DocuSign for both accounts. I went very still. She turned the first document toward me. Life insurance beneficiary change. Submitted October 9th. Current beneficiary Nora Caldwell. Requested new beneficiary Everett Caldwell and Sienna Voss co-beneficiaries. She turned the second document. IRA beneficiary change. Submitted October 10th. Same pattern, Nora out. Everett and Sienna in. I stared at the signatures. My signature. Perfect digital replicas. My same method, Colette said. Same Cedar Park IP address. Same Samsung Galaxy tab. The audit trails matched the house sale contract exactly. He was systematic. How much? Total attempted theft across both accounts, $1.07 million. Add the house sale at $389,000, and your son was trying to take $1.46 million. The numbers felt abstract, too large to process. Why didn't they go through? I asked. Secondary verification form. Both insurance and IRA require a notarized secondary form for beneficiary changes over $500,000. Anti-fraud measure. Everett submitted the primary DocuSign requests, but he didn't have time to forge the notarized forms before you came home 2 days early. I looked at the dates again. October 9th. 2 days before I'd stood on my porch trying my passcode 4 times. How long does it take to plan stealing a father's entire life? A year, 2. How many family dinners did we share while he was mapping this? The fabricated dementia records. Colette continued. Weren't just to steal the house. They were to sideline Nora. If she tried to object to the beneficiary changes, Everett had documentation showing she was incompetent. He could have her declared unable to manage finances, gotten power of attorney over her assets too. She leaned back in her chair. The house was never the main target, Mr. Caldwell. It was cover. Something visible to distract from the real theft. The target was your retirement, everything you'd built over 40 years. I sat there looking at the documents, the numbers, the dates, the signatures that looked exactly like mine because they were mine, stolen from the tablet I'd trusted my son to help me set up. What do we do now? I asked. Motel. We have enough for criminal charges. Federal computer fraud, identity theft, attempted wire fraud, conspiracy, elder financial abuse. Combined sentencing guidelines put this at 15 to 20 years minimum. I nodded slowly. But we need them to incriminate themselves further. Right now, Everett could claim he had your permission, that it was a misunderstanding. We need him to demonstrate intent. And how? Colette looked at me for a long moment. That's what you're going to figure out. Friday night at 10 o'clock. I sat alone in my truck in the motel parking lot. I had a legal pad on the dashboard. I was drawing a blueprint. Not of a building, of a conspiracy. Orchestrated Houston trip 3 weeks away, far enough that I couldn't respond quickly. Location tracking app monitor every movement, know exact moment I returned. Digital signature theft, use my own tablet against me while I slept in Houston hotels. Fabricated dementia records eliminate Nora as obstacle, make her look incompetent. House listing through Sienna's friend, Rowan insider realtor, willing to move property fast and cheap. Beneficiary changes for all major assets, the real prize $1.07 million. I thought about that first night at the motel when Nora said, "Don't blame Everett just yet. There's something much worse than you think." She wasn't expressing doubt. She was preparing me for how much it would hurt when I understood the full truth. 40 years of construction taught me that a seasoned foreman knows when preparation ends and the heavy machinery needs to roll in. The mapping was complete. It was time to break ground. I pulled out my phone, called Colette. "It's late," she answered. "I want to pretend I'm going along with the sale," I said. "I need everyone in the same room at the same time." Silence on the other end. That's dangerous, Lester. If they realize then I need to be convincing enough that they don't." Another pause. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I call Everett tomorrow. Tell him I'm tired. Tell him I don't want to fight anymore. Tell him I'll sign whatever he needs me to sign if he'll just let Nora and the kids come home. And then we set a meeting. Signing appointment, official, get Everett there, get Sienna there, get Rowan there with his forms. All of them in one place thinking they've won." Colette was quiet for a long moment. "If we do this, we have one shot. They can't know you're setting a trap. You'll need to look broken, defeated, like a man who's given up. I looked out at the dark parking lot, the distant freeway lights, the motel where my wife and grandchildren were sleeping in a room that cost $60 a night. I've been a construction supervisor for 40 years. I know how to play a role when the inspection depends on it. All right, she said. How much time do you need? I thought about the deed in Nora's name that Everett didn't know about. The DocuSign audit trails, the fabricated medical records, the incomplete audio recording, the Facebook photo of Rowan and Sienna. 1 week. I need you to coordinate with law enforcement, and I need everyone at that table, Everett, Sienna, Rowan, all of them. I'll make the calls, Colette said. But Lester, be careful. Cornered people do desperate things. So do fathers who've been robbed by their own sons. I hung up and sat there in the truck, drawing the final lines on my blueprint. 3 days after I'd finished drawing my blueprint, Everett sent a text. To Dad, can we talk? Just the two of us. I know I messed up. Please. The park where we used to fish, I forwarded it to Colette. He's making his move. She replied, be careful, record everything. Saturday afternoon, I drove to the lakeside park. Same place where I'd taught Everett to cast a line when he was 8. I arrived early, parked where I could watch him approach. He showed up at 2 o'clock, alone, walking slow, hands in pockets. He looked tired, older than 40. I sat at the pavilion. He sat across from me. I used to love this place, he said. Remember when I caught that bass, thought it was the biggest fish in Texas? It was 12 inches. You were convinced it was a record. He smiled, sad. I was 8. Everything seemed bigger then. Silence. Then he looked at me. Dad, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but Sienna twisted everything. She made me believe you were cutting me out, that you'd leave everything to charity. I watched his face. He looked sincere. I only realized this week how wrong I was, he continued. The documents she showed me, I think they were forged. She was manipulating both of us. For a moment, I almost believed him. What documents? Trust amendments, beneficiary changes. She said you'd signed them. He shook his head. I should have talked to you first. You should have. Your dad. What evidence do you have? Maybe we can fix this together. Prove Sienna was behind everything. There it was. What do you know? I let silence stretch. Played exhausted. Now I have bank records, transfer logs, DocuSign audit trails, on a USB drive, at the house in my office. Can I see them? I work in IT. I can help trace digital footprints. Not today. I'm tired, Everett. I've been sleeping in a motel for 2 weeks. I just want this over. I understand. He stood, walked around the table. I'm glad we talked. He opened his arms. I stood, let him embrace me, felt his hand brush my jacket pocket. Quick, practiced. I noticed his cologne, polo green, the same scent I'd worn at my wedding, the bottle I'd given him for his 21st birthday. Weaponized nostalgia. We pulled apart. This means everything. I watched him drive away, then checked my pocket. The USB drive was gone. I texted Colette. He took the bait. Her response, get here now. I drove to Austin, walked into her office at 3:15. Show me what he stole, she said. I pulled a second USB from my glove compartment, handed it to her. She plugged it in. 2 files, utility bills, 2023, and read me. She clicked the utility bills. 6 months of electricity and water. Nothing else. Then opened read me. Text file. 8 words. Thanks for stopping by, son. Real evidence is somewhere you'll never find it. Dad. Colette read it aloud in a mock fatherly voice. Paused. You know this will enrage him. I'm good. Angry people make mistakes. She leaned back. Where's the real evidence? Wells Fargo. Safe deposit box 217. 3 copies of everything, one at home, one in my truck, one in the bank. Construction site habit. Smart, paranoid, but it paid off. Colette closed the laptop. Everett goes home, opens that drive, realizes he stole a decoy. Then he has 2 choices: run or escalate. Which will he choose? Escalate. He's in too deep. His only path forward is finishing what he started before we move. How long? 10 days, maybe less. The theft proves he knows evidence exists. He'll move fast. My phone buzzed. From Everett. Thanks for today, Dad. Meant everything. I showed Colette. He thinks he won. He thinks he has your evidence, and you're broken. Until he opens the drive. And then... She looked at me. When he opens that drive and sees the note, he'll realize you've been 3 steps ahead. That's when sons like him stop playing nice. I looked at the text. Meant everything. Then we move fast. What's next? I dig into Sienna's background. Find leverage. Find something that makes Rowan flip. We need one of them to break ranks. And Everett. May we wait. Let him panic. Let him make the next mistake. She closed her laptop. But be ready. When that panic sets in, he's going to do something desperate. I stood. What if he comes after Nora or the kids? Then we move immediately. I've already briefed a detective at Cedar Park PD. 1 call and they respond. But I don't think it'll come to that. Everett's not violent. He's calculating. He'll try one more manipulation first. I nodded, walked to my truck, sat there looking at Everett's text. Meant everything. I thought about that hug, his hand in my pocket, the cologne I'd given him 12 years ago. How long had he been planning this? How many father-son moments had been reconnaissance? I started the engine and drove back to the motel. 10 days until Everett made his next move. I'd be ready. Everett didn't wait 10 days. Sunday morning, 36 hours after I'd let him steal the decoy USB, the forensic accountant sent his report. The email subject line read, "Urgent Deadline Analysis," and I knew before opening it that Colette had found the why. I sat in the motel room, laptop open. Nora was downstairs with Ivy getting breakfast. I clicked the email. From David Garrett, CPA. Subject, Sienna Voss, Financial Analysis, Urgent Timeline. I scrolled to the findings. Sienna Voss operated a mini Ponzi scheme at Webb Realty Group over 18 months. Used new client earnest money deposits to cover personal debts and previous client shortfalls. Current debt to Cedar Park Private Lending, $87,000. Repayment deadline, 16 days from today. I read that number again. 16 days. I called Colette. You saw the report, she said. She wasn't greedy, I said. She was drowning. Yes. And your house was the life raft. $389,000 would have cleared her debt and left breathing room. The cruise timing wasn't coincidence. She had 16 days left. She needed you gone long enough to forge signatures, file paperwork, close the sale. 3 weeks in Houston was cutting it close, but it was enough. I thought about the itinerary Everett had sent me. The Houston job that appeared out of nowhere. The company I'd never worked with before. Everett arranged that job, didn't he? We're looking into it, but yes, I think so. How many crimes do you commit when you're drowning? And at what point does desperation stop being an excuse? If we can prove the timeline matches her debt deadline, Colette said, motive becomes undeniable. This wasn't a family dispute. This was systematic theft driven by financial panic. What's next? We wait. Sienna's lender will start calling soon. When that pressure increases, people crack. And when people crack, They make mistakes. Exactly. I hung up, sat there looking at the forensic report. $87,000, 16 days. A deadline that explained everything: the manipulation, the fabricated records, the forced eviction of my wife. Sienna Voss wasn't a master criminal. She was a desperate woman who'd convinced my son to help her commit federal crimes. Monday morning, I sat in Colette's office. Ms. Mercer, there's a Rowan Finch here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. Says it's urgent. Colette looked at me. I nodded. Send him in. Rowan Finch walked through the door alone. Mid-40s, sandy hair going gray at the temples, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt. The Cedar Park realtor from the Zillow listing. The man from the 2019 Facebook photo with Sienna's arm over his shoulder. He looked at me, then at Colette. Mr. Caldwell. Ms. Mercer. He sat down without being invited. I'm not here with an attorney because I'm not here to fight. I'm here to protect myself. Colette leaned back in her chair. Go on. Sienna Voss came to me 6 weeks ago. Said her father-in-law wanted to liquidate the family home quickly. Needed cash for assisted living. She had a power of attorney signatures on file, the whole package. And you believed her, Colette said. At first, yes. Then during escrow review, I noticed the signatures didn't quite match. Digital versus handwritten samples, small discrepancies. I asked questions. He pulled out his phone. Sienna implied that if I raised concerns, I'd be framed as a knowing accomplice. That she had documentation showing I was in on it. He looked at me. I'm not going to prison because your son's wife needed a quick house flip. Before I tell you what Rowan revealed next, are you still here? Comment A. If you think Rowan's about to throw Sienna under the bus, or B, if you think he's protecting himself, add Y in one sentence. A quick note. The next part includes some fictionalized details added to convey the emotional impact. The lesson is what matters. So you started recording, Colette said. Every conversation. Texas is one-party consent, fully admissible in court. How many recordings? 14 phone calls, 6 in-person meetings. Colette glanced at me. And you're willing to turn those over. I'm willing to cooperate fully in exchange for immunity. I was manipulated. I want that on record. Colette opened her laptop. Let's hear one. Rowan plugged his phone into her computer. Pulled up an audio file. Clicked play. Static first. Then Sienna's voice, slightly muffled but clear. Timeline's tight. If the old man comes back early, we move everything up. Everett handles the signature forgery. I handle the medical incapacity paperwork. Rowan's voice. What if someone questions the documents? Sienna. They won't. Medical papers are easy. I have a nurse contact who'll backdate the dementia assessment for $2,000. After that, no one listens to the wife. Then Rowan hit play on another file, and I heard my daughter-in-law's voice planning my legal death. The recording ended. Colette closed the laptop. Mr. Finch, I'll need copies of all 14 calls and documentation of the 6 meetings, already prepared. He handed her a USB drive. Everything's on there, time-stamped, unedited, with metadata intact. Colette took the drive. We'll be in touch about the immunity agreement. Don't leave town. Rowan stood. Looked at me. Mr. Caldwell, for what it's worth. I'm sorry. I should have gone to the police immediately when the signatures didn't match. He left. I sat there in Colette's office staring at the USB drive on her desk. Play it again, I said. The part about the nurse. Colette plugged in the drive, found the file, played it. Sienna's voice. Medical papers are easy. I have a nurse contact who'll backdate the dementia assessment for $2,000. Colette paused it. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's falsifying medical records. That's elder abuse. All felonies. How many more recordings mention me? She looked at the file list. I'll need to review all 14. But based on what Rowan said, probably most of them, I leaned back in my chair. Thought about Sienna's $87,000 debt. Thought about the 16-day deadline. Thought about my son helping her forge signatures while I slept in a Houston hotel. When do we move? I asked. Soon. We have Rowan's testimony. We have the recordings. We have the DocuSign audit trails. We have the fabricated medical records. She closed the laptop. We're almost ready. One more piece. What piece? Your grandson Finn. He's 12. Old enough to testify about what he heard, about what he was told, about why he gave you that phone with the recording. I thought about Finn sitting on the motel bed, not looking at me crying when he thought no one could hear. He's a child, I said. He's also a witness, and if this goes to trial, we'll need him. I nodded slowly. Then we talked to Finn, but carefully. He's already been through enough. We didn't get the chance to approach Finn carefully. Wednesday afternoon, he called me first. The unknown number flashed twice before I answered, and the voice that came through small, shaking, terrified, was Finn's. Grandpa, Finn, where are you? Jason's house. I borrowed his phone. His voice broke. I heard them last night. Mom and Dad. They were talking in their bedroom and I was in the hallway. What did you hear? They said the kids will stay here. They're leaving us. They said something about money and out of state and they'd deal with us later. My hand tightened on the phone. Where's Ivy? Still at school. Finn, can you get to the school front steps? Yes. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay where people can see you. Don't tell anyone you called me. I grabbed my keys and drove. Finn sat on the front steps when I pulled up, backpack beside him, hunched over. He saw me, stood, ran straight to me and wrapped his arms around my waist and started crying. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I didn't know they were lying. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I held him, felt his shoulders shake. 12 years old, and already Finn understood that choosing a side meant losing half his world. You're safe now, I said. I've got you. We sat in my truck behind the school engine running. You said you heard them. Did you record it? He nodded. Pulled out his phone, the emergency phone I'd given him. So I recorded through the door crack. The picture's blurry, but you can hear them. He opened the video, handed me the phone. I hit play. The screen showed a narrow slice of bedroom, dark and shaking. But the audio was clear, Everett's voice. Once the wire clears, we're gone. Flights booked. We land in Phoenix, drive to the border, cross into Mexico before anyone realizes. Saktigitane and your mother. My mom and the kids stay here. We deal with them after we're settled. The 16-day deadline. I know. That's why we moved this weekend. Saturday. We close the deal, wire clears Monday, we're on a plane Tuesday. Sienna. What about the old man? What if he has evidence, Everett? He doesn't. I got his USB drive. It had nothing. He's broken. The video ended. I sat there staring at the black screen. Is this enough to stop them? Finn's voice was so small. Did I do the right thing? I looked at him. You protected your sister. That's what brave looks like. He wiped his eyes. Are they really going to leave us? Not anymore. I checked the video timestamp. October 23rd, 11:47 p.m. The same night Everett stole the decoy USB. The same night he thought he'd won. Finn, I need to send this to my attorney. Can I do that? He nodded. I forwarded it to Colette. Then texted, next weekend, Cedar Park House. Everyone will be there. 30 seconds later, warrant. I looked at Finn. We need to get Ivy. Right now. I drove to the elementary school office with Finn beside me. I'm here to pick up Ivy Caldwell. Family emergency. The secretary checked her computer. I'll need ID, and you are her grandfather, Lester Caldwell. I'm listed as emergency contact. She checked, nodded. I'll call her down. 5 minutes later, Ivy walked in, holding her pink backpack. Saw me. Ran. Grandpa, I picked her up. We're going on a little trip. Where's Mommy? Your mom's busy. You're staying with me and Grandma for a few days. I carried her to the truck, buckled her in beside Finn. Nora was waiting outside room 114 when we arrived. She looked at Finn's face, at Ivy's confusion, at me. They're coming with us, I said. She nodded. I'll get their room ready. That night after the kids were asleep, I called Colette. I saw the video, she said. I've already contacted a judge. We'll have a warrant by Friday. For what? Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted kidnapping. The video establishes they plan to abandon the children. Elder financial abuse. Computer fraud. All of it. When do we move? Saturday. Like you said. I'll coordinate with Cedar Park PD. Set up the meeting at your house. Tell Everett you're ready to sign. Get him there, Sienna there, Rowan there. When they're all in the same room, we execute the warrant. How long until Sienna's deadline? 6 days. She has 6 days to come up with the money or her lender calls law enforcement. She's desperate. That makes them dangerous. Then we end this Saturday. Sturdy. Colette confirmed. 1 week to prepare. I looked at the motel room where my family slept. I've held out this long. 1 more week won't break me. I hung up. 6 days until Saturday. 6 days until I faced my son in the house I'd built and watched him get arrested for trying to steal everything I owned. 6 days to prepare for the moment that would either restore my life or destroy what was left of my family. I sat in the dark parking lot, Finn's video playing in my head. My mom and the kids stay here. We deal with them later. Not anymore. Not ever. Friday night. I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of documents I'd memorized by touch. The house was quiet. Vera had taken the kids to see a movie, giving us space. Nora sat across from me, hands folded around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. I need to show you something, she said. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Not new, the paper had that soft quality from being handled, the flap sealed and resealed with tape that had yellowed at the edges. My name in her handwriting across the front, dated 3 years back. What is this? Open it. Inside was a photocopy of a deed. Travis County Clerk's Office recorded April 2009. The property at 2847 Oakmont Drive, our house, the one I'd built with my own hands, transferred to Nora Caldwell, sole owner. Not joint tenancy. Not my name anywhere on the document. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. You knew, I said. I found it in your filing cabinet when I was looking for the insurance papers. 3 years ago, right after Everett got married. And you didn't tell me. Nora's hands tightened around the mug. I didn't understand what it meant. I thought maybe you'd done it for estate planning or taxes or one of those technical reasons you and Colette discussed. I sealed it up and wrote your name on it because it felt important, but I didn't know what to do with it. You could have asked. I know. Her voice cracked. I know I should have. But then things got worse with Everett, and I was so focused on keeping peace, and I convinced myself it didn't matter because we were married, because the house was ours, no matter whose name was on paper. I set the photocopy on the table between us. He can't sell what you own, Noma, she said. He can't. The envelope had been waiting like a seed under snow, not hidden, just dormant until spring. Now it was blooming into the one piece of evidence that could stop everything. Everett had forged documents, manipulated records, tracked my movements, but he couldn't forge away a deed that had been filed 17 years ago, long before he'd even thought to steal from me. Why give it to me now? I asked. Nora looked at me for a long moment. Because I'm not keeping peace anymore. Because I should have chosen you 3 years ago and I didn't, and I can't fix that. But I can choose you now. Something in my chest, that had been locked tight since the passcode changed, started to loosen. Not forgiveness, that would take time, but recognition. She'd been in her own trap, and she was fighting her way out. Do you need me there tomorrow? She asked. The relief of hearing yes break out of my throat surprised me. I do. She nodded once decisive. Then I'll be there. Saturday morning came faster than I expected. I met Colette at her office at 9, the deed photocopy in a folder with everything else we'd assembled. Finn had texted me at dawn, I'm coming. Not a question. But warrants active, Colette said, hanging up her phone. Judge signed it at 8 this morning. 2 deputies standing by plain clothes. They'll be in position at the house by 11:30. I'd laid out the plan like a foundation, pour every step, measured every contingency, braced. Rowan would arrive at 11:50 with recording equipment running. I'd show up at noon for the fake signing appointment Everett had scheduled. When Everett and Sienna tried to complete the fraud, Colette would text go and the deputies would move in. What about Finn? I asked. Colette glanced at the doorway, where my grandson stood dressed like he was going to court. 12 years old, and carrying himself like a boy who'd already decided what he was willing to risk. He stays in my car, Colette said. Parked half a block away. He's not going inside. And I recorded them, Finn said. I should be there. Nah, you did your part, I told him. The video you got is enough. No. His jaw set in a way that reminded me of myself at his age, stubborn and convinced. They said we deal with them later. They meant me and Ivy. I'm not hiding while you clean up the mess I helped make. You didn't make this mess. I believed him, Finn said quietly. For months, I believed everything Dad told me about you. That you were confused, that you needed help, that he was protecting the family. I didn't question it until it was almost too late. Colette looked at me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes, not legal strategy, but human recognition. Finn needed this. Not to be in danger, but to be present for the moment his father's lies came apart. 3 hours until noon, and I realized I wasn't walking into battle alone anymore. You stay with Colette, I said. You don't get out of the car unless she says, but you can be there. Finn nodded, and I saw something settle in his expression. Not victory, but the kind of quiet resolve that comes from knowing you've earned your place in the room. Colette checked her watch. Everett and Sienna expect you at noon for the signing. Rowan's there at 11:50 with recording running. Deputies enter when I text go. I pocketed Finn's phone, felt the weight of the video my grandson had recorded. Evidence of conspiracy, of planned abandonment of a father willing to discard his children to save himself. 3 hours. I looked at the deed photocopy one more time. Nora's name alone on the property I'd built. The thing Everett didn't know existed, couldn't have planned for, would never see coming. Let's go, I said. The key still fit. Which surprised me. I half expected Everett to have changed the locks by now. 11:58. 2 minutes early. I stood on my own front porch, the brass key I'd carried for 36 years, warm in my palm, and turned the deadbolt I'd installed myself in 1993. The door opened without resistance. Inside the house smelled like coffee, and the faint cedar scent from the beams I'd salvaged for the ceiling. Everything exactly where I'd left it, the throw pillows Nora had arranged on the couch, the stack of fine home-building magazines on the end table, the photo of Ivy's college graduation on the mantel. My reading glasses still sat on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. No boxes, no evidence of packing, no sign that anyone had planned to move in or move out. The theft wasn't about wanting the property. It was about erasing me from my own life while leaving the shell intact. Dad, good you're here. Everett stood at the dining table I'd built from reclaimed oak papers spread across the surface. Sienna sat beside him, hair pulled back, dressed like she was closing a business deal. Rowan occupied the corner chair, laptop, open fingers resting on the keyboard, but not typing. Recording just like we'd planned. Let's get this done, Everett continued. Rowan has another appointment at 1. I closed the door behind me, took my time removing my jacket. Colette had arrived 30 minutes earlier through the back. I'd left it unlocked for her before driving around to the front. The dining table sat 8 comfortably. I'd designed it that way for family dinners back when family meant something different. Now Everett had positioned himself at the head, my usual seat, with documents fanned out like he was the one granting permission. I'd like to read the full agreement first, I said, pulling out a chair across from him. Every page. Everett's smile tightened. There's no need. My attorney reviewed everything. It's standard quitclaim language. You sign page 7 and 12, Rowan notarizes, and we're done. Standard for who? For estate transfers when there's been confusion about capacity. He slid a pen across the table. This protects everyone, Dad. Protects you from liability, protects the family from complications down the road. Sienna nodded, her expression carefully neutral. It's really the cleanest solution. I picked up the first page. The header read, Voluntary Quitclaim Deed and General Release. Voluntary. I scanned the opening paragraph. Whereas the grantor acknowledges diminished capacity and wishes to transfer all interest in the property located at 2847 Oakmont Drive. Diminished capacity. I read aloud. See medical language? Everett said quickly. Insurance term. Doesn't mean anything. I turned to page 2. Rowan's fingers moved slightly on the laptop keyboard, capturing this every word. I could see the red recording indicator reflected in the screen's corner. Who reviewed this? I asked. My attorney, I told you. Which attorney? Everett hesitated for half a second. Marcus Thorne, out of Austin. Why, I'd built this house in 1987, raised Everett in these rooms, taught him how to use a level and read a blueprint and shake hands on your word. And now sat as a guest at my own table, waiting for permission to read my own eviction. Just curious, I said. I flipped through the pages, slowly reading clauses about indemnification and release of claims. Page 7 had a signature line with my name typed beneath it. Page 12 had another, this one, releasing Everett Caldwell from any liability related to property management during the period of incapacity. This releases you from liability, I said. Standard protection, Sienna interjected. In case there were any decisions made on your behalf that you later questioned. Decisions like what? Like changing the passcode, Everett said. Like managing the bills while you were traveling. Administrative things. I set the papers down, looked at my son. Really looked at him. His tie was too tight, his jaw set in that stubborn way that used to remind me of myself. Now it just looked like a mask he'd practiced wearing. Marcus Thorne, I repeated. Out of Austin. That's right. Interesting. I folded my hands on the table. Because my attorney had different concerns. Everett's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. You don't have an attorney. I do now. Footsteps in the hallway behind them, soft, deliberate. Colette stepped into view from the back bedroom, briefcase in hand. She'd been in the house the whole time, must have entered through the back door while Everett and Sienna were setting up their performance. Rowan didn't even glance up. He'd known part of the coordination. See, because Marcus Thorne doesn't exist, Colette said evenly. Texas State Bar has no record of anyone by that name licensed to practice in this state. The hallway had been empty 30 seconds ago, but Colette's coat was still damp from morning rain. Everett stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. What is this? Hawking, see. This is your father's attorney, Colette said. She set her briefcase on the table, clicked it open. Colette Mercer, representing Lester Caldwell. I've been in the next room for the past 15 minutes listening to you commit fraud in real time. Sienna's hand moved toward her purse, then froze halfway. Her eyes darted to Rowan, whose fingers were still poised over the laptop keyboard recording light, still glowing red. You're recording this, Everett said to Rowan. I am, Rowan confirmed quietly. I stayed seated, kept my voice level. You didn't mention the quitclaim when you called me last week. You said you wanted to discuss estate planning, maybe help me organize my finances. Helpful son, worried father. Everett's face had gone pale. This is a setup. You didn't mention DocuSign, I continued, or the power of attorney you filed in my name, or the insurance fraud claiming I had dementia. Colette pulled a folder from her briefcase. Or the attempted beneficiary change on your father's life insurance. Or the Zillow listing for this property at $389,000. I looked my son dead in the eye. And you didn't say you changed the passcode to my house. Outside through the window behind Everett's head, I saw movement. 2 Travis County Sheriff vehicles pulling into the driveway, slow and deliberate. No lights, no sirens, just the quiet approach of consequence. Everett followed my gaze, turned, saw the cars. When he looked back at me, something in his face had collapsed, not into regret, but into cornered animal panic. Sienna stood abruptly. We should go. No one's going anywhere, Colette said softly. Colette didn't ask permission. Before connecting her laptop to my television, the DocuSign audit trail filled the 55-inch screen in brutal detail. Blue interface, white document, thumbnail, metadata, timestamps marching down the right side like an indictment. October 2nd, 11:47 p.m. Colette read aloud, pointing to the screen with a pen. IP address traces to Cedar Park, Texas. Device identifier shows Samsung Galaxy tablet model SM-T870. Geolocation confirms this address. Everett stood, frozen eyes locked on the screen. The document states Lester signed from Houston. Colette continued. But Houston would show different IP range, different timestamp. You forged this signature while your father slept in his own bedroom 30 feet from where you sat. That's not, Everett started. There's more. Colette clicked to the next slide. Insurance claim form screenshot from the provider portal. Dementia assessment filed September 18th by Dr. Raymond Kowalski. Except Dr. Kowalski retired in 2021 and his medical license expired 2 years ago. The assessment was fabricated using his old credentials. Sienna's face had gone pale. I didn't know about the doctor, so you knew about the tablet, Everett shot back. You're the one who took it from his luggage. I borrowed it, Sienna hissed. You said you'd handle the signature. Rowan stood slowly from his corner seat, placed his phone on the table between them. I have 14 recordings, he said quietly. September through October. You want to hear them? The room went silent. Rowan tapped his phone. A woman's voice filled the space, Sienna unmistakable. You handle the DocuSign signature. I'll handle the medical papers. We split the difference after closing. Everett's voice responded, and Rowan gets his cut for notarizing. 10%, Sienna confirmed. Clean and quick. Rowan stopped the playback. That was September 21st. I have 13 more. Dates, amounts, who does what. All of it. Everett turned on him. You set us up. You involved my business in fraud, Rowan said evenly. I protected myself. Sienna grabbed her purse, stood. This is on you, Everett. You said the tablet was clean. You said your father wouldn't check. You said the medical records would hold up. I used the credentials you gave me. Watching Everett and Sienna turn on each other was like watching a house fire consume itself. No water needed, just time and oxygen. The front door opened. Nora stepped inside, and the argument died. She held a large envelope, the kind county clerks use for official documents. Her coat was still buttoned, her expression unreadable. "I thought you might need this," she said. She crossed to the dining table, set the envelope down in the middle of the scattered quitclaim papers. From inside, she pulled a single sheet protected in a clear plastic sleeve, embossed seal, visible official stamps along the margins. "A certificate of title," Nora said. "Travis County, Texas, recorded March 2009. Colette picked it up. Read aloud. "Owner Nora Caldwell. Sole proprietor of property located at 2847 Oakmont Drive, Cedar Park." The room seemed to stop breathing. "This house never belonged to Lester to sell." Colette continued, her voice cutting through the silence. "You can't steal what he doesn't own." Everett stared at the certificate, like it was written in a language he'd never learned. A year of planning, months of manipulation, weeks of escalation, all destroyed by a 15-year-old decision made out of love and estate planning. "Why?" he whispered. Nora looked at him steadily. "Because your father wanted me protected if anything happened to him. Because that's what marriage means." The back door opened. I heard it before I saw movement. Two figures in Travis County Sheriff uniforms stepped into the living room. The older one, mid-40s with graying temples, and the kind of steady presence that came from 20 years of bad situations, surveyed the room with professional detachment. His nameplate read, "Reeves." The second deputy, a woman with dark hair pulled back and sharp eyes, positioned herself near the hallway. Her tag said, "Ortiz." "She's Everett Caldwell," Deputy Reeves said. "Sienna Voss, Travis County Sheriff's Office. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of an elder. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda warning filled my living room like recited prayer. Words I'd heard on television, never imagined hearing spoken over my son. Deputy Ortiz moved to Sienna first, guided her hands behind her back. The handcuffs clicked with a sound that seemed too loud, too final. Sienna didn't resist, just stared straight ahead while her wrists were secured. Everett stepped back. "This is entrapment." "This is documentation," Colette said. "Everything recorded, witnessed, voluntary." Deputy Reeves approached Everett with calm authority. "Hands behind your back, please." The front door opened again. Finn stood in the threshold, backpack over one shoulder. He'd been in Colette's car half a block away, but he must have seen the deputies enter. 12 years old, and watching his father get arrested, learning what justice costs when it fractures your family. "Dad," Finn said quietly. "I'm sorry. I had to." Everett didn't respond. Deputy Reeves secured the handcuffs, checked them professionally, then guided Everett toward the door. Sienna was already outside Deputy Ortiz, walking her to the first patrol vehicle. At the threshold, Everett stopped, turned, looked at me, searching for something in my face, forgiveness maybe, or understanding, or some acknowledgement, that this wasn't how fathers and sons were supposed to end up. 68 years of life, 40 years of being his father, reduced to this silent exchange across a living room that was never mine to lose. I had no words ready, no wisdom, no comfort, no final statement that would make sense of what we'd become. I just looked back. Deputy Reeves guided him forward, and Everett disappeared through the door into October sunlight. The silence after the door closed felt heavier than the shouting that came before it. 5 of us stood in the living room. Me, Nora, Finn, Colette, and Rowan. Evidence still scattered across the dining table. DocuSign audit trail frozen on the television screen. The air smelled like coffee gone cold and the residue of confrontation. Colette gathered her laptop, unplugged the HDMI cable with practiced efficiency. Everett and Sienna are being booked right now on multiple felony charges. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of an elder. Travis County DA will file formal charges Monday. "What happens to the kids?" Nora asked. "Emergency custody defaults to next of kin." That's you. Colette closed her briefcase with a decisive click. Family court will formalize it Monday afternoon, but Finn and Ivy stay with you during proceedings. Could be weeks, could be months, depending on plea negotiations. Finn stood near the window watching the street where his father had disappeared in the back of a sheriff's vehicle. 12 years old and processing what it meant to testify against your own parent. "While the house sale is voided," Colette continued. "Nora's title is clear, always was. Any buyers who put down deposits will be refunded through the real estate company's insurance. The Zillow listing is already down." Rowan shifted uncomfortably. "I'll provide whatever testimony the DA needs. Full cooperation." "Smart," Colette said. "You recorded them committing crimes. That makes you a witness, not a co-conspirator, but only if you stay cooperative." She turned to me. "Lester, you'll need to give a formal statement Monday. Victim impact timeline of events, documentation of emotional and financial harm." "I'll be with you." I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. Colette touched my shoulder briefly, professional sympathy from someone who'd seen this story play out in different families, same ending. "You won. Remember that when it stops feeling like winning." She left through the front door, Rowan following quietly behind. The house felt too large, suddenly too empty, despite Nora and Finn still standing there. Nora looked at me. "Let's go home." We are home," I said. "I know, but we still need to make it feel that way again." Finn walked beside me naturally, no hesitation, no distance. At the front door, I pulled out my key, the brass one I'd carried for 36 years, the one that had fit the lock even after everything else had been changed. I slid it into the deadbolt instead of reaching for the electronic keypad. The lock turned. The door opened, reclaiming ownership through the smallest gestures, metal on metal mechanism and intention. Finn understood. 12 years old and already understanding that reclaiming home happens in small, deliberate acts. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "can I help you change the passcode back?" "Yeah," I said. "Let's do that first." We stood at the keypad together. I reset it to the code I'd used for 20 years. Nora's birthday, the numbers I could punch in half asleep. Finn watched the screen confirm the change, then tested it himself. 4 beeps, green light lock releasing. "That's better," he said. Nora made coffee while I walked through the house room by room, touching familiar things. The light switches I'd installed, the crown molding I'd cut and fitted, the bathroom tile I'd laid on my knees over 3 weekends. Every surface held memory, and I needed to remember this was mine, ours, not stolen, not lost, just temporarily occupied. Evening came faster than expected. Nora drove to the motel where Ivy had been staying with her aunt, brought her home as the sun set orange through the cedar trees. Ivy stood in the living room, holding a small backpack, looking around like she'd entered a museum of her own life. 8 years old, blonde hair tangled from the car ride, wearing sneakers with the laces untied. "Chatissa, is my bed still here, Grandpa?" she asked. Not about her parents, not about the arrests, not about anything except the one thing that mattered to a child who'd been displaced. "The one with the pink sheets?" "Right where you left it, sweetheart," I said. "Everything's right where you left it." I led her down the hallway to the room she'd slept in since she was 3. The door opened on pink curtains, a bookshelf with well-loved paperbacks, a desk with crayons scattered across the surface, and the bed full size with pink floral sheets, a quilt Nora's mother had made, and a pink teddy bear sitting on the pillow. The bear had waited there for a month, patient as hope, certain as a child's love. Ivy dropped her backpack, climbed onto the bed without taking off her shoes. She grabbed the bear, pulled it against her chest, and lay down, still fully dressed. "Thank you for coming back," she said, voice already drowsy. "I was scared you wouldn't." The words hit like a hammer to the sternum. September echoing forward, the 8-year-old who'd watched her grandfather get locked out, who'd heard her father's explanations about confusion and illness, who'd believed maybe the old man really had left them. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. She was asleep in minutes, breathing steady and deep, the bear clutched tight. I stood in the doorway watching her. Nora's hand found my shoulder warm and familiar. Ivy had no biological connection to me, Sienna's daughter. From before she married Everett, no Caldwell blood in her veins. Legally, she was my step-granddaughter, a relationship built on marriage certificates and family trees that could be diagrammed with straight lines. But watching her clutch that pink bear and breathe steady, trusting that her bed would still be here and her grandpa would come back, I knew some bonds mattered more than DNA. "She's ours now," Nora whispered. "She always was," I said. The phone rang at 11:43 p.m. Travis County Detention across the caller ID, and my finger hovered over the red button before Nora's hand stopped me. "Took your choice," she said quietly. "But choose knowing you'll live with both answers." I stared at the screen. Permitted call, 15 minutes maximum recorded for security purposes. My son calling from a cell where he'd spent his first night arrested. I answered. "Dad." Everett's voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. Not the confident businessman who'd sat at my dining table 2 weeks ago pushing fraudulent contracts. Not the manipulative son who'd changed my passcode and tracked my location. Just someone young and scared, which he hadn't been in 30 years. "I'm here," I said. Silence on the line, punctuated by background noise, metal doors, distant voices, the institutional echo of detention. "I'm so sorry," Everett said finally. His voice shook. "I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know. I'm sorry for everything." I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd read the quitclaim papers, where Colette had spread evidence of fraud. Nora stood near the counter, not hovering but present. "Do you—" Everett paused. "Do you forgive me?" The question hung there, weighted with expectation. Forgiveness as transaction, as reset button, as permission to move forward without carrying the cost. I took a long breath. "I don't know, son," I said. "But I love you, and those two things don't always mean the same thing." The silence that followed felt different. Heavier maybe, or clearer. "I understand," Everett said quietly. "Take care of yourself in there," I told him. "Whatever comes next, you take care of yourself." I ended the call before he could respond. Set the phone on the table screen, going dark. Nora placed a cup of tea beside me, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. "I still love him too, Ray," she said, using the nickname she only pulled out in moments of tenderness or grief. "But love doesn't mean we give him another chance to destroy us." "No, I agreed. It doesn't." The tea cooled while I sat there thinking about the difference between loving someone and trusting them, between family and safety, between forgiveness and boundaries. The legal machinery moved faster than I expected. Colette called 3 days later with updates that felt both satisfying and hollow. Sienna was indicted on multiple charges: elder financial abuse, classified as a first-degree felony, falsifying medical records, wire fraud. The DA offered a plea deal: 8 to 12 years full restitution, permanent ban from notary or financial services work. Her attorney took it within 48 hours. Everett faced computer fraud, conspiracy, and his own financial exploitation charges. His attorney wanted to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. DocuSign audit trails, Rowan's recordings, Finn's video, the fabricated medical assessments. Every lie documented, every manipulation preserved. Rowan cooperated fully. As a witness, turned over all 14 recordings without reservation. He avoided criminal charges, but the Texas State Board opened an investigation into Webb Realty. His business would survive, probably, but the reputation damage was done. The house sale was formally voided. The listing disappeared from every real estate platform. The insurance company reversed the dementia-based policy changes after reviewing their fraud investigation. My life insurance beneficiaries reverted to Nora and the grandchildren. How do you measure justice when the defendant is your son and the victims include his own children? Family court granted temporary custody of Finn to me and Nora pending formal review. For Ivy, the judge noted that Sienna's biological relatives had been contacted, but were either unreachable or had declined placement. Given that Ivy had lived with us for 6 months and considered us her family, the court approved temporary placement with us as well, pending a full guardian ad litem review. The judge, a woman in her 60s, who'd probably seen every variation of family disaster, looked over her glasses at us and said simply, "They're fortunate to have you." I won. So why did winning taste like ash? Colette said it would take time. You dismantled your son's life to save your own. That's not supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel necessary. Necessary. The word followed me for weeks. 1 month after the arrests, I found myself standing in the small storage closet at the end of the upstairs hallway. 8 feet by 6, crammed with boxes of tax documents and old construction blueprints and Christmas decorations we hadn't used in years. I started clearing it out. Finn found me Saturday morning with a tape measure and notepad sketching dimensions on the back of an envelope. "What are you doing, Grandpa?" "Making a study," I said. "For you and Ivy. Somewhere to do homework, keep your books. Figured you could use the space." He grabbed the other end of the tape measure without being asked. "This wall's 7 feet 2 inches. You want shelves? 3 of them. Adjustable so they grow with you." We worked through the morning clearing boxes, patching nail holes, painting the walls a clean white that made the small space feel larger. Finn measured lumber while I cut, learning the careful attention that construction demanded. Precision mattered. Every 1/8 of an inch counted when you were building something meant to last. Ivy appeared around lunch with a sheet of stickers, stars, moons, suns in gold and silver foil. "Can I decorate the door?" she asked. "It's your study too," I told her. "Make it yours." She arranged constellations across the hollow core door with the serious concentration of an 8-year-old artist. Each sticker placed deliberately pattern emerging from instinct rather than plan. The study was 8 feet by 6, too small for grand plans. But Finn needed desk space, and Ivy needed somewhere her stickers mattered, and sometimes that's enough. Nora stood at the threshold watching us work. "What are you making, Ray?" I set down the hammer, looked at the small room taking shape. Pine shelves already mounted awaiting books. Fresh paint drying. Ivy's decorated door catching afternoon light. "A study," I said. "For the kids." But really, I was building forward instead of dwelling back. Reclaiming what mattered, not the house, not the money, not the legal vindication. The grandfather role, the daily presence, the small acts of care that add up to family. Ivy stepped back to admire her sticker constellation: gold stars, silver moons, one bright sun positioned where morning light would hit it. "It's perfect, Grandpa," she said. I looked at Finn, measuring the final shelf, Nora organizing the books we'd pulled from storage, Ivy's careful decoration, transforming a closet into something that belonged to them. I couldn't fix everything. Couldn't undo Everett's choices, couldn't erase the trauma, couldn't restore what September stole. But I could build this room. The study room smelled like fresh paint and pencil shavings. Proof that 8 feet by 6 could hold more than boxes if you knew what mattered. Mid-November now, 3 weeks since I'd cleared out the storage closet. Finn's desk occupied the left wall, textbooks stacked by subject, notebook, open to physics problems. Ivy's desk claimed the right side, art supplies, in mismatched cups, a half-finished drawing of our house. Her gold stars and silver moons decorated the door, catching afternoon light. Nora stood in the doorway, a smile at the corner of her mouth. The study wasn't just a room, it was evidence that transformation happened in small, deliberate acts, repeated until they became normal. Ivy looked up from her drawing. "Grandpa, can you help me reach the colored pencils? I need the good ones for sky." I handed them down. She was already selecting the exact shade of blue focus, narrowing her world to paper and color. Finn sat at his desk, staring at something that wasn't homework. When he noticed me watching, he pulled a folded paper from his backpack. "Grandpa, can I show you something?" He held it out, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's an essay for English. We had to write about the person we admire most." I took the paper, felt the weight of 12-year-old anxiety folded into standard notebook lines, unfolded it slowly. The title read, "The Person I Admire Most," by Finn Caldwell. His handwriting still slanted left. Like Everett's used to, genetics don't care about courtrooms or custody. My grandfather is 68 years old and works in construction. He has concrete dust under his fingernails that never washes out and calluses on his palms from 40 years of building things. He calls it honest labor, something you can see and measure and know whether you did it right. In September, I watched my grandfather stand on our front porch, trying to get into his own house. The passcode didn't work. He tried 4 different combinations. He could have walked away, found a hotel, given up. He didn't. He knocked on a neighbor's door and started asking questions. My grandfather didn't give up. Not on the passcode when it failed 4 times. Not on the truth when everyone said he was confused. Not on me and Ivy when it would have been easier to walk away. He knows how to build things that last, and he knows the difference between what's easy and what's right. That's why I admire him most. I folded the paper carefully, handed it back to Finn. "It's perfect," I managed. "Turn it in exactly like this." "You're sure it's not too plain?" "Shucks and too. It's honest," I said. "That's better than fancy." Relief washed across his face. He tucked the essay into his backpack and returned to his 7th grade math problems. Ivy hummed while she colored sky with the exact right shade of blue. And I stood there feeling something that might have been pride or grief or the complicated space between them where family lives. Task 7.2. Friday dinner was spaghetti with too much garlic, and Nora complained I'd used 3 cloves when the recipe called for 2. And that ordinariness felt like victory. Late November now, the kind of Texas evening where summer finally admitted defeat. 4 of us sat at the kitchen table, same table where Everett had spread fraudulent contracts 2 months ago, but the configuration had changed. Ivy twirled spaghetti with 8-year-old determination, tomato sauce on her chin. And then Mrs. Henderson said my watercolor mountains were the best in the whole class. She put them on the wall by the principal's office. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Nora said. Finn pushed pasta around his plate. "Why does algebra need letters? Numbers were working fine on their own." "Letters let you solve for unknown values," I said. But I don't want unknown values. I want them to stay unknown so I don't have to find them." Nora reached for the salt shaker I'd been using, moved it to the far side of the table. "Ray, your blood pressure. Less salt." "Yes, ma'am." Finn finished his serving, then reached for the water pitcher without being asked. Poured Ivy's glass first, then his own. Small gesture of care nobody had taught him, he'd just absorbed it, from watching us navigate the daily architecture of taking care of people. I watched him pour, watched Ivy thank him absently, while describing the exact shade of purple she'd mixed for mountain shadows. This everyday warmth, this unremarkable Friday night, was exactly what I'd fought to protect. Not the house, not the assets, not even justice, really. This. The ordinary piece of people who loved each other sitting around a table arguing about garlic and algebra. What do you call it? When you win everything and lose your son justice or just devastation with paperwork. I still didn't have an answer. Everett had taken a plea deal in mid-November, 6 years, with possibility of parole and 4 full restitution permanent restraining order from financial services work. Sienna was serving her sentence. Rowan had testified, cooperated, walked away with suspended notary license, but his freedom intact. The house title was clear, Nora's name always had been. December came quiet. My weak point was loving Everett. Not the love itself that was just fatherhood. The weakness was loving him too much to see what he'd become, to recognize when protection became enabling, when family loyalty crossed into willful blindness. I'd stood on my porch in September, trying passcode combinations, and every failed attempt was evidence I'd missed the signs. The manipulation, the gradual isolation, the careful construction of a narrative where I was confused, and he was helpful. But my foundation was Nora. Tax benefits, maybe, or asset protection, or one of those practical decisions married people make and then file away and forget. I'd loved her enough to do something small that felt meaningless at the time, and that small, forgotten act of love had saved us. The study room was 8 by 6, 2 desks, 2 lamps, 4 walls, painted contractor white, but it held more love per square foot than the rest of the house combined. I walked past it every morning now, part of the routine. December mornings in Texas dark until almost 7, and I'd wake early out of habit. Make coffee, stand in the hallway, watch them get ready for school. This morning was no different. Friday again, end of the week, and I stood in the doorway holding my coffee mug while Finn hunched over a science textbook and Ivy practiced cursive on wide-ruled paper. The room still smelled faintly of paint. Finn's desk lamp cast warm light across his notebook, highlighting the same left-slanting handwriting from his essay about the person he admired most. Ivy's lamp illuminated her careful loop's tongue between her teeth in concentration. 2 children studying in a space that used to hold boxes of old tax returns and Christmas decorations. 2 desks I'd measured and built and sanded smooth. 4 walls I'd painted on my knees. Bookshelves holding library books and rock collections, and proof that transformation happens in small, deliberate acts. Ivy's stickers still decorated the door, gold stars and silver moons catching morning light. This was the image I'd carry. Not courtrooms or depositions or Everett's face when deputies led him out in handcuffs. Not Sienna's plea deal or Rowan's recordings or the DocuSign audit trail on my television screen. This, 2 grandchildren studying in the room I built from a storage closet. Learning algebra they didn't want to learn and practicing cursive nobody used anymore, and doing homework that mattered because it was theirs to do. Home wasn't the house I'd built in 1987, or the passcode that locked me out in September, or the deed with Nora's name protecting us in October. Home was Finn looking up from his textbook to ask if I wanted to quiz him on vocabulary. Home was Ivy showing me the cursive capital Q she'd finally mastered. Home was walking past this doorway every morning and seeing proof that some things, maybe the most important things, could be fixed. I couldn't restore what September stole. Couldn't undo Everett's choices or erase the fracture in our family or recover the son I'd thought I had. But I'd built this room. One small space, 8 feet by 6, where 2 children could study and grow and learn that persistence looks like trying the passcode 4 times instead of walking away. And some mornings that was enough. And to you listening to my story, remember this: sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who can hurt you deepest. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier. I loved my son so much that I became blind to what he was becoming. I thought family loyalty meant never questioning, never doubting. That was my mistake. Don't make the same one I did. Pay attention when something feels wrong, even if it's someone you love. Especially if it's someone you love. The lesson I learned wasn't about family justice or getting revenge. It was about knowing when love requires boundaries. Dad's revenge stories, like mine, aren't really about revenge at all. They're about standing up when everything in you wants to give in. I believe God allowed this trial to teach me the difference between loving someone and enabling them. Sometimes seeking family justice means protecting the innocent even when the guilty party shares your blood. These dad's revenge stories aren't about winning. They're about surviving what your own family tried to take from you. If this story moved you, I'd appreciate if you'd leave a comment telling me what you think. Should I have handled things differently? Would you have fought back or walked away? If you know someone facing family betrayal, share this with them. And please subscribe to Wise Revenge for more true stories about standing up when it matters most. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know. A final note: while this story is based on real experiences, some details have been adjusted or fictionalized for storytelling purposes and to protect privacy. Any resemblance to specific individuals or situations is coincidental.